Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 update by Heerak. This is September 12th, 2020, election year. As you know, Heerak Christian Kim, that's who I am. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. Um, yeah, current Congressman is Don Beyer, and obviously, I believe I could do far better job than Don Beyer, who's a Democrat and a supporter of legalization of marijuana. Um, when we look at history, countries that fell often because of sloth or laziness or like opium or some kind of drugs, because when a nation stops being productive, obviously nation can collapse. Um, if a nation doesn't have a strong army, the nation becomes vulnerable to other nations. And when there's immorality in the country, the whole country kind of collapses because physical infrastructure is not what holds the country together. It's the basic unit of the country, which is the individual and then the family. So when you do not have a normal family functioning adequately, then the country collapses because human infrastructure is very important to the survival of a nation. So physical infrastructure cannot stand without human infrastructure. That's why religion plays a significant role in providing a kind of moral infrastructure that allows a society to function. When you think about all the things that go wrong, it's because of jealousy. Um, Human relationship related. So friendships fall because of jealousy. Husband and wife become divorced because they cheat on each other, or they don't spend enough time building the family. Um, and a perfectly economically viable individual becomes poor because of divorce. For example, the husband has to pay alimony um, when he gets divorced, and many husbands who get divorced they can't handle that because if you have two paychecks coming in and you all live under the same roof, your husband and wife, father and mother, man and children, then you're only paying what, one mortgage or one rent payment. So let's say you're paying $1,500 as a family in a, let's say, two-bedroom apartment with one room for husband and wife and one room for a child. Um, that's fine, right? And then you share your food. All the furnitures are together. All the utilities are together. Um, so basically, a family of three, and if you have two little children, four, can function relatively okay if husband and wife are both, making decent wages. Let's say husband and wife both work at Walmart. If they're not divorced, they could adequately survive because you're paying one rent, you're sharing food, um, and you have one utility. You have, you may share a car, one car payment. So everything is kind of, fairly low. So two paychecks of two people who are just working for minimum wage can survive as a family. But if this family gets divorced, then now the husband has to live in a separate apartment, which may be over 1,100, 200, and the wife is living in a $1,500 apartment with the child. Husband has to pay alimony to the wife, and the wife may work, but it's harder for her to work because you can't do different shifts, or she only is there alone with one or two children. It's harder than if there were a father and mother there. They could alternate time schedules. There are things you can do. Um, and then the husband is now paying for a separate car payment. The wife is paying for separate car payment, and separate utilities, separate food. So everything becomes expensive. So the woman and the man, both of them were not living under the poverty line when they were living together as a family. Because of divorce, now they're living under poverty line, both of them. And they could both become homeless. And so you see how the family unit staying together, not having divorce is crucial, not only to the family and not only to the two individuals, man and woman who are married, but at the mega structure, United States of America, for it to function adequately economically, we cannot have people in the working class or middle class getting divorced because you're going to have exponential growth of poverty. So, yes, from a Christian perspective and from a religious perspective, Jesus Christ said, don't get divorced. And that's very important. You should not get divorced. No divorced person can serve as a leader in the church. So if you're a Baptist minister who got divorced, you got to resign. Stop serving as a pastor. Because, New Testament is very strict about it. You should not have gotten divorced. Yeah, so, it's important to be faithful to the requirements of the Bible. You can't just say, I love Jesus, so I'm just going to keep serving as a pastor. You've done divorce. You can't do that. There are rules and regulations in Christianity. You can't just ignore them. You see what I'm saying? So Jesus did not want you to get divorced because that's something he doesn't want you to do. So in the New Testament, that principle is clear. Obviously, Jesus wants you to be happy, and not getting divorced will, in the short run and the long run, make you happier than if you get divorced. Children of divorce are traumatized. So I'm sure Tiffany Trump is traumatized by the divorce between President Donald Trump and Marla Maples, her mother. Every child of divorce has been traumatized by the divorce. That's just, it's evidence-based literature confirms this. Children of divorce suffer psychologically, mentally, sometimes socially, emotionally because of the divorce. Because you're talking about father and mother who loves each other, and with a child, that's you. And as a child, you're modeling your relationships, future relationships, the concept of loving relationship based on your parents. So when two parents get divorced, for the child, the concept of true love or real love or lasting love no longer exists. So, child becomes cynical at a very young age because of the divorce that the parents have. You could fight, as long as you stay together, it kind of gives security to the children psychologically, because they understand love is strong enough so that even though two people can fight, they still stay together. They're not abandoning each other, right? So it's better to have horrible yelling fights and stay together than get divorced. Because even if you fight, if you stay together, it reaffirms the concept of lasting love as being stronger than your emotions or your conflicts. But when parents get divorced, it sends the message that there's no love that really works, right? Can bide a storm. And that's why it's better for mom and dad to yell and scream at each other and stay together. Obviously, hopefully you don't yell at each other. Hopefully you get along, but it's better for you not to get divorced, because eventually that's going to work itself out. It may take a day, a week, month, a year, 3, 4 years, 10 years, we don't know, but it works itself out. But in the midst of it all, if you stay married, it reaffirms for the child, even if you're fighting all the time, that love, there is such thing as love that is strong enough that even though you're fighting, you don't abandon each other. You don't get abandoned. And that's a very important concept. And that's why it's better to stay married even though you're fighting. Obviously, Bible does allow you to get divorced for adultery, but once you get divorced, you're not supposed to get remarried. So if you get divorced, as a woman, you can't have sex again until you die. If you get remarried, it's living under sin. It's considered adultery, living in adultery. Obviously, you can't have sex after you get divorced. So sexual purity is very important to God, and that's why we have Virgin Mary, who was a virgin when Jesus was born. The sexual purity is very important to God. God didn't want God's only begotten Son to be born of a woman who's not a virgin. This virgin womb is a sinless womb. Once penis enters it, it's no longer sinless. So there's a physical reality to the spiritual reality. And that's very important and clearly emphasized in the Bible. And that's why we venerate Virgin Mary, because her virginity is important. And we call that the virgin birth of Christ in Protestantism. And in Catholicism, it's called Immaculate Conception. A virgin birth of Christ in the Protestant tradition is very important because sin travels physically through the male. So every person who is born with original sin are born with original sin because of the male sperm. Male sperm carries a sin. So when male sperm impregnates and fertilizes the egg, the zygote already has sin because sin travels through the male sexual sperm. So at the point of fertilization, you have original sin. And that's one of the arguments why abortion is wrong and life starts at conception. It is enforced by spiritual reality of original sin starting at the moment of pregnancy, moment of fertilization, when zygote is formed. So obviously, there's a biological fact in terms of zygote being a combined life, new life. But from a spiritual angle too, original sin enters and starts at the moment of fertilization. And that's why Mary's womb was sinless, and that's why God could become incarnate or take on human flesh inside a virgin womb because it's sinless. But male sperm is not sinless. It carries a sin. So there are physical realities to spiritual realities. And that's why when the woman who was bleeding uncontrollably, when the moment she touched Jesus's cloth, her bleeding stopped. Miracles happen because of objects. So if there is a sacred object, even if you're not praying and you touch the sacred object, you get healed. We know this to be absolutely true because in the Gospels we have examples of this, right? We have examples of people being healed just by touching Jesus. So that's why, if you see the movie Ben-Hur, they kind of talk about that concept in the movie Ben-Hur with Charles Heston. It's a very good movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a classic movie. I encourage you to see it. But yes, there are certain sacred objects that carry power, and that's in the Bible. In the New Testament, it's in the Old Testament as well. There are certain objects that carry death, like the Holy of Holies. When Uzzah touched it, because Uzzah did not want it to fall off the cart, he died instantaneously. So certain objects have sacred power that heals you. Certain objects have deadly power that kills you. Just by touching something, you could be healed. Just by touching something else, you could die. So there are sacred objects, and that's why crucifix is very powerful. The cross And early Christians made the sign of the cross. We do it like this now. Um, and Catholics do that a lot, but certain Protestant traditions do that too. And it's always good to make the sign of the cross. New Testament and early Christians talk about the sign of the cross. So, even if you're Protestant, making the sign of the cross this way or this way, whichever way, making the sign of the cross has significance. Um, the cross has power to ward off evil, and sacred objects like shroud of Jesus, that Roman soldiers threw lots to separate, or or the resurrected shroud of Jesus. They have sacred power. Um, yeah. So a problem in the Protestant tradition is because during the Reformation, Protestants tried to differentiate themselves from the Catholics. Some reformers went too far because the Bible clearly says some objects have power. Um, so you can't just deny that all objects do not have power in and of themselves, like inanimate objects, like the plastic hand here. You can't say this doesn't have power. It could have power, um, because you know um, there are objects that have innate power in themselves. Um, and that's why we talk about the holy water and, concept of holy water being able to ward off evil. I know some Protestants laugh at that. Um, I mean, you gotta take things carefully with the word of God. But obviously, Bible does talk about anointing with oil and sacred water, and there's the concept of, flowing sacred water. And we see this in the New Testament on early Christian writings like Didache. And so we cannot deny that there's power in the water, especially like water that is used for baptism. Um, and so, and we talk about the baptismal font. And so, there's a reason why God wants you to be baptized with water. And the Bible talks about the need to be baptized with water and spirit. So why doesn't God just say, be baptized with the spirit and be done with it? God actually wants you to be baptized with water. The question is why, right? Because water baptism carries not only symbolic importance, but an actual physical impartation of grace. That's why you anoint the priests, you anoint the deacons, you anoint the kings, because there is a physical impartation of grace by touching of objects like sacred water. And some Protestants want to deny all of that, and those people generally go in the wrong direction because the Bible has sacred objects. You can't reject things just because you are in a group conflict, like Protestant versus Catholics. If something is in the Bible, you got to accept it. If the Bible wants you to reject it, you got to reject it. You got to follow the Bible. The Puritans, as you know, started Harvard Divinity School and Yale Divinity School. Right? These were seminaries that trained Puritan pastors. And for many decades, they were very Bible-centered. But eventually, they went off the rockers. They went in the wrong direction. And now Harvard Divinity School and Yale Divinity School, they're liberal. And I know Charlotte Pence Bond, Vice President Pence's daughter goes to Harvard Divinity School. Hopefully she doesn't become liberal and become a feminazi. I studied at Harvard Divinity School, as you know, and Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, Jewish Studies Department, Department of Eurasian Studies. That's where Jewish Studies is housed. So I know Harvard very well. So I do worry about Charlotte Pence Bond. Hopefully she doesn't lose her salvation by going to Harvard. Reverend Billy Graham said his friend, the Baptist friend who went to Princeton Theological Seminary, which is a Presbyterian Church USA seminary. Uh, went to the seminary, lost his faith, lost his salvation. Yeah, some people go to seminary, they lose their salvation. I mean, that does happen. Um, yeah, like my close friend, Alan Kirkenschlager, he's an Assemblies of God minister. He went to Assemblies of God seminary. I think that's in Oklahoma. I'm not sure where that is, but I think it's near Oral Roberts University. So he got ordained in the Assemblies of God, and he was actively preaching in the Assemblies of God. And when we were in Israel together, he had a Fulbright scholarship for his PhD studies at University of Pennsylvania. I had the Lady Davis Fellowship for my PhD studies in history at UCLA. You know, both of us went to King of Kings Church, which is an Assemblies of God church in Jerusalem. And I see him all the time dancing around and praising God, which is great. And then we came back to America. He got his PhD from University of Pennsylvania, became professor at St. Joseph's University. I met him at Society of Biblical Conference one day. I mean, I meet him all the time in these conferences when I go. And he told me like he doesn't believe in Jesus anymore. Like he's not a Christian anymore. And this is a guy who was anointed by the Holy Spirit, spoke in tongues, and was ordained in the Assemblies of God Church. Yeah, like when I was in Jerusalem, he was the most devout Christian that I've known in Jerusalem. And he just, you know, like after he got his PhD, after his prayers were answered, after he became professor at St. Joseph's University, a major university, what does he do to thank God? He just abandons God and says, I don't believe in Jesus anymore. There are a lot of theologians like this. Like if you go to Harvard, and I was at Harvard, there are a lot of Baptist people who go to Harvard and they lose their faith. You know, they submit to the world. And so I worry about, Charlotte Panspan, who went to Harvard Divinity School. Hopefully she doesn't lose her salvation, you know. Because I've seen Baptist ministers, I've seen Assemblies of God ministers like, you know, Alan Kirkenschlager. You could Google him. He's a very distinguished scholar of New Testament. Yeah, I see like Assemblies of God ministers, Baptist ministers, Nazarene church ministers, Foursquare church ministers who love Jesus. They go to Harvard or University of Pennsylvania or Princeton and they lose their salvation. I mean, they literally tell you, I don't believe in Jesus anymore. I don't believe in God anymore. I mean, obviously they're not Christians, but they genuinely believed in Jesus Christ for like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. You know, they just lose their faith. Yeah. So yes, you can lose your salvation. Bible says some will fall away. I mean, some people will lose their salvation. The Puritans who emphasize that you can never lose your salvation, look at what happened to Harvard Divinity School and Yale Divinity School. They were wrong because they were so theologically wedded, theologically loyal to their Calvinism, that they weren't willing to take the Bible at its face value. Right? When Bible says some will fall away, that means some will lose their salvation. So they should take that at their face value. And there's a reason why Calvinist Puritan Seminary of Harvard Divinity School and Yale Divinity School are the most liberal seminaries in the world, where many professors don't really believe in Jesus as God, the only true Savior of the world. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you cannot trust human theology like humanisms, Calvinisms, you know, Lutheranism, you know, you can only trust in the Bible, right? You can always go back to the Bible, not to your theological catechism, not to your confession of faith, not to your doctrinal standards. You can always go back to the Bible because look at what happened to the Puritans. All they do is talk about theology. All they do is talk about catechism, Westminster Confession of Faith. And look at what happened to them. They lost their salvation. And now the two seminaries are like training Satan worshipers, you know. Like, you know, they're saying gay marriage is okay. I mean, how is that okay? Romans chapter 1 clearly says it's not okay. But they take their logical conclusions to human reasoning. Human reasoning ultimately ends up rejecting God. You know, that's why faith has to be superior to any kind of human reasoning or rationalism or human ideas, or you're going to go away from God. And that's what happened at Harvard Divinity School. That's what happened at Yale Divinity School. That's what happened at Princeton Theological Seminary. These are all Calvinist seminaries that used to produce great ministers, like historic pastors, but they all went away from God. And so there's a problem with theology which does not follow the Bible. Yeah. And I'm a little bit afraid it may be happening with like some evangelical pastors, like Reverend Franklin Graham, or Reverend Tim Keller, or Reverend John MacArthur, or Reverend Joel Osteen. I worry about them. And you know, um, yeah, I mean others as well. Because once you start relying on your theology and saying, once saved, always saved, you say things like that, you become an antinomian. Antinomian means you can sin all you want, you still go to heaven. That's the idea behind antinomianism. Yeah, it's a theological heresy. So when I see like tweets from like Reverend Franklin Graham or Reverend Joel Osteen or Reverend John MacArthur or Tim Keller talking about like basically saying like, if you're saved, you're not gonna lose your salvation. I say you gotta get off that because the Bible says some will fall away. Because that encourages antinomianism. If you're truly born again, you're not gonna lose your salvation. You can do whatever the heck you want. You can have all the sex and adultery you want. Oh, you're not gonna lose your salvation. No, it doesn't work that way. And the Bible is very clear because King Saul was saved, obviously. He was anointed by God, chosen by God to be a leader, to be a servant. So he was saved. And then God rejected him because he refused to commit a complete genocide of Amalekites and let King Agag live. When God commands you to commit complete genocide, you gotta complete the genocide. Obedience to God is what God demands. Disobedience is sin. So when God says complete a complete genocide against Amalekites, commanded King Saul, he had to do it, but he didn't do it. And the prophet went to him and said, you know, why didn't you do what God told you to do, which was commit complete genocide of Amalekites? And King Saul tried to get out of it, weasel out of it by saying, well, I'm going to go to church and worship. God doesn't want you to worship if you're going to disobey God. And so that's when the prophet said to obey is better than sacrifice. It's better for you not to worship God or go to the church if you're going to disobey God. And this applies to Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1 says you must oppose homosexuality. Deuteronomy says you must illegalize homosexuality by national and state law. If you're not going to obey God, don't go to church tomorrow because it's worthless. If you don't want to stand against homosexuality, if you don't want to illegalize homosexuality, don't go to church. It's useless. It's not going to save you. And that's what King Saul learned the hard way. The prophet tried to persuade him. You need to repent for not committing genocide against Amalekites, complete genocide for all living human beings in that ethnic group. You need to repent for that, but King Saul refused. He's like, I'm just going to worship Jesus. Or, well, Jesus is God. He says, I'm going to worship God. And God is Jesus, right? Yahweh is Jesus. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. 3 in 1 is Yahweh. Jesus is included. Gospel of John 1 clearly says, in the beginning was the Word of God. In the beginning was God. And he talks about Jesus, Jesus is the Word. So Jesus existed in the beginning. So God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, God the Son is Jesus Christ. All three of them existed in eternity to eternity. So Jesus is Yahweh. Yeah, Yahweh. Yahweh incarnate is Jesus. That's why, you people who are Jewish, who are rabbinic Jewish, like meaning you go to synagogues, Reform synagogue, Orthodox synagogue, conservative synagogue, Reconstruction synagogue. These are all like creations after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70s. So these are like fake Judaisms. Um, Actual Judaism is the Old Testament Israelite religion, which has sacrifices. And that authentic Israelite religion or ancient Judaism was continued in Christianity. Jerusalem temple was destroyed. Jesus Christ is the sacrifice, the lamb of sacrifice uh, in the Old Testament temple. That was a picture of the Messiah, Mashiach, to come. Yeshua, Mashiach. So so if you're Jewish, you should accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior because that's the logical continuation of the Old Testament. Please think about it. Is there a sacrificial lamb? Is there a sacrifice in of a life in rabbinic Judaism? Because in the Old Testament, there was sacrifice of life, sacrifice of lamb, life. And in Christianity, we say Jesus is the sacrificial lamb who was sacrificed. And if you see the New Testament, that analogy is there. So because he is God who became man, he's a perpetual sacrifice for eternity. And that's why, one sacrifice in Jesus is enough for eternity. Because he's the sacrificial lamb, God incarnate, who's God, eternal being, who became human in order to die. God cannot die, so he had to take human form to die. That's why God took on human form in order to die as a sacrificial lamb. So the sacrifice in the Old Testament was continued in the sacrifice of the New Testament in Jesus Christ. And that's why Jesus says, this is the cup of the new covenant, because the old covenant is with Abraham, and that there was sacrifice, right? But in the new covenant, you have Jesus who is the sacrifice. So the Lord's Supper is what we call sacrificial table. We eat of the body of Christ, we drink of the blood of Christ, right? So we partake in the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, and that's how we are saved. So Christianity is the legitimate continuation of ancient Israelite religion, which is Judaism. The rabbinic Judaism right now, Orthodox Jew, modern Orthodox Judaism, Reformed Jew, Reconstruction, they're all like fake because they were created after Jerusalem temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Like they didn't have the sacrificial system anymore because the temple was completely destroyed. And they, so they just basically decided to start a new way of religiosity with people who used to belong to a religion that was ancient Israelite religion. So they're not being able to practice the core essence of ancient Israeli religion, which is daily sacrifice. So it's not the same religion, right? I mean, how can you call it the same religion when in ancient Israel there was sacrifice every day, right? And in the New Testament era, there was still like sacrifice in the temple. And now in post New Testament era, there isn't sacrifice. So how can you call it the same religion, Christianity, as we say, is continuation of ancient Israelite religion. And the whole ancient Israelite religious tradition existed to point to Jesus Christ. And now that Jesus Christ came in 0 AD, all of us look back to Jesus Christ, right? So in the Old Testament time, people are looking forward to Jesus Christ. And after Jesus came and died, every one of us look back toward Jesus Christ. So the zero, absolute zero is Jesus Christ. And before that was negative, after that is positive, but we all look back to the absolute zero. Yeah, so if you're Jewish, you should convert to Christianity because your Judaism is not authentic. It's not authentic Judaism. It's not authentic Israelite religion. It's an authentic rabbinic Judaism that was created, and rabbinic text was codified in 200 AD, earliest one. So that's like fully 170 years after the death of Jesus, 130 years after destruction of Jerusalem, after Jews were scattered around the world. it took 130 years to come up with a codified religious system, um, which is the Mishnah. And the Babylonian Talmud and Jerusalem Talmud came hundreds of years later than that. So it's a different religion from ancient Israelite religion, which is based on the Old Testament. And as you know, Old Testament was written down. They had a copy of the Old Testament in Hebrew at the time of Jesus, and also a copy of the Old Testament in Greek at the time of Jesus. So that is the religion of the book. That is authentic Israelite religion. So if you're Jewish, I mean, there's no reason to follow a false fake religion, which is not a continuation of ancient Israelite religion, because there's no sacrificial system for 2,000 years. It's just a smart move to convert to Christianity, which is the true continuation of ancient Israelite religion. My ancestors died and went to hell. For 5,000 years, everybody in my ancestry went to hell forever. They're going to burn forever. There's no redemption for them. I'm like 4 generations Christian from Korea. It's 100 years. But for 5,000 years, every one of my ancestors went to hell because they weren't Christians. So, you have no requirement to remain in rabbinic Judaism. If there are people who are, if you probably are not 2,000-year Jewish, because a lot of people converted. It's not like, like if you're blonde and blue-eyed, obviously you're not Jewish, authentic Jewish, because the Jewish race is not Aryan. I mean, if you're blonde and blue-eyed, I mean, Jewish race looks more like Iranians. That's where Abraham is from, Haran. So obviously, if you have blonde or blue eyes of light skin, you're not racially Jewish. I mean, you're somewhere down the 2,000-year line, somebody converted. It's like Ivanka Trump converted to Judaism. Right? She's not Jewish. She has no Jewish roots. But in Spain, Jews were the wealthiest people. So some people, in order to marry Jews, converted. Because Jews in Spain had a lot of money. But then in 1492, Jews were all kicked out. And then in Germany, Jews had a lot of money. Like you see, even in England, with Shylock, the Jew in Merchant of Venice, Jews had a lot of money, even in Shakespeare's time. Shylock's daughter converted to Christianity to marry a Gentile, but that's obviously triumphant writing by a Christian, a Shakespeare who wants to show Christians as triumphant, over Jews. But there are a lot of Christians who converted to Judaism to marry these millionaire Shylocks, So that was a reality in the time of Shakespeare, right? And there was a reality in Germany as well, in France, all of other European countries, wherever there were wealthy Jews. Obviously, Jewish race is better than many people, and some of them, wanted to marry non-Jews, and they got them to convert. Gentiles converting to Judaism has been around for the longest time, even during time of the early Christians in the Book of Acts. You have the God-fearers in the Book of Acts. And God-fearers are Gentiles who convert to Judaism or are thinking about converting to Judaism, so they do observe some of the Jewish traditions. Yeah. So this has existed in the time of Jesus as well, and even before then. I mean, if you go way back to Dana, do you remember children of Jacob, otherwise known as Israel? Do you remember Dana wanted to marry this Gentile guy who's like a pretty important guy in his society, and she got him to convert and get circumcised, and then Dana's brothers went and slaughtered everybody after they were in pain from circumcision. This is in the book of Genesis. So there have been people converting to marry Jews since the very beginning of time. When there were distinguished Jews and Gentiles, or Israelites and Gentiles. Even during time of when you think about it, even Abraham has sex with Hagar, Egyptian slave woman of Sarah, and Ishmael was converted into Judaism. He was circumcised, so he became Jewish. But they were cast out, and obviously Ishmael abandoned Judaism. Now Ishmael represents Islam, right? Arabic nations that became Islam. And so yeah, so it's like Arabs are and Jews racially, are blood related, right? Even going all the way back to the days of Tehran, father of Abraham, who went from like a vision in Iran to the promised land, which is Israel. He marched from Iran to Israel. So obviously, racially, ethnically, he was with the Iranian people. That's the race. Um, so we call that Persian, but it's the categories of Persian and Arabic is a little bit more recent because Abraham was far before that, obviously. Um, so yeah, so we just need to understand, that most of America's Jews are not racially Jews right now. Most of the races, most of the tribes are gone. They said, out of the 12 tribes, 10 tribes are lost. So, most Jews don't know what tribe they belong to. There were 12 tribes, but 10 tribes were lost like thousands of years ago. Um, so, yeah, if you're Jewish, I would say convert to Christianity because Christianity is the true continuation of the ancient Israelite religion, Old Testament. Are you going to go to synagogue and support homosexuality? Talmud and Torah. Talmud is based on Torah, 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, calls for death or a death penalty or capital punishment for homosexuals. So you go to a Jewish synagogue that says, that has a gay, lesbian rabbi. You think that religion is a true religion? Are you kidding me? You're just wasting your time. You're wasting money. There's no afterlife that's going to come to you going to a synagogue with a gay rabbi. How are you going to be saved? You're just wasting time. You may make some friends, but you can always make friends elsewhere, so yeah, if you're going to a synagogue, like a reformed synagogue, a conservative synagogue, where there are gay rabbis, where they say homosexuality is okay, you think that's a true religion? Rationally speaking, do you think that's a true religion? Think about it. Your synagogue, conservative synagogue, and the conservative seminary is Jewish Theological Seminary, which is on campus of Columbia University. They say homosexuality is okay. How can that be true religion when it goes directly against the sacred text? Why are you wasting time going to a conservative synagogue? You're not going to be saved through that, right? A religion that stands opposed to the sacred text is most likely, rationally speaking, not a genuine religion. You see what I'm saying? Religion starts with sacred texts, like Christianity and Judaism and Islam. If religion deviates from the sacred text, that's like proof positive that you're going to a false religion service. You're part of a false religion group that is deviated from the sacred text. So regardless of other issues, the fact that a religious church or synagogue or mosque or organization goes away from the original text should raise red flags. You're like, how could they be genuine religion if they don't follow the sacred text, religious text like the Bible? Logically speaking, that's a fake religion, right? So why are you wasting your time? And this goes for Christians too. You go to a Christian church where homosexuality is accepted, it's fake religion because it goes against the Old Testament injunction against homosexuality, and it goes against Romans chapter 1, which is in the New Testament injunction against homosexuality. So how could you be going to a church with true religion if you're going to a church that accepts homosexuals or fights for homosexual rights or flies a rainbow flag? You're going to a fake church. Why would you go to a fake church? Doesn't make sense. Like I drive through Falls Church in Virginia, and I see like this Falls Church, Presbyterian church flying a rainbow flag. I'm like, that's a fake church. It's proof positive they're a fake church if they're flying a rainbow flag. And I drive to like Annandale, and I see Knox Presbyterian church with like a rainbow flag. You know that's a fake church. Why would you go to a church that flies a rainbow flag when you know it's going directly against Romans chapter 1? I mean, you're not going to go to heaven going to a church like that. I mean, you may not care if you go to hell or heaven, but, if God exists and God created heaven and hell, and I believe that he did, then obviously he's going to be the one who admits you or not admits you. It's like any kind of membership. If you want to become a member of any like fraternity or sorority, there are certain rules and regulations that you have to follow, initiation processes of the fraternity and sorority. In the same way, God has initiation process like baptism, right? But he also has rules and regulations that you have to observe or respect. I mean, you may not, you have to respect and recognize that they are the correct rules and regulations and follow them in order to go to heaven. You see what I'm saying? So, yes, I mean, you are saved by faith, but you must recognize that the Bible is the true word of God. You may not keep everything that's there, but when you break it, you gotta repent. But there are rules and regulations, right? Like blasphemy, the Holy Spirit never can be forgiven. It's one of the rules. It's like, if you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die. There's no redemption, there's no forgiveness. I mean, there's forgiveness for your sin, but there's no forgiveness to the sense that you will not die. Like, yeah, God may forgive you, but you still die if you break that rule. So, God's very hung up on rules. That's why when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they were given death. God didn't show any mercy. Because God is hung up on rules and regulations. God is law and order kind of guy. So if you don't follow God's law and order, then you're gonna suffer. That's what God does. So when God promises in Romans chapter 1 that he's going to send wrath of God for homosexuality, he's going to do it. Because God is law and order God. You're not following his law and order to illegalize homosexuality, God's going to punish you. It's simple. God operates in a predictable way, which is, comforting for us because as long as we're following his rules, we know we're safe, right? So there's a uh, good side to every story, right? God's going to punish you for your sin. Yes, it's horrible if you sin, but God's going to bless you if you don't sin. You know what I mean? So things are predictable. Um, yeah. As you know, I'm running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District, which is Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and parts of Fairfax County. And Don Barr is a Democratic elected official. He's the current congressman. Obviously, I'm planning to beat him. I believe I'll be far better than Don Barr as a congressman. I'm sure you will agree with me. Yeah, so, I filed a lawsuit against Governor Northam and Virginia Department of Elections because Governor Northam issued the stay-at-home order on March 30th to last till June 10th, making it impossible for me to collect 1,000 signatures after I became independent at the end of February, beginning of March. So I asked for a waiver from the Virginia Board of Elections for 1,000 signatures because Governor Northam issued the stay-at-home order, and he wrote back and saying, I can't give you that waiver because I don't have legal authority. So I wrote to Governor Northam, and Governor Northam still hasn't written back. So the deadline for the 1,000 signature was June 9th. So I filed a lawsuit in Arlington Circuit Court on June 3rd, asking the court to step in and force Governor Northam and Virginia Department of Elections to waive my 1,000 signature requirement and put my name on the ballot. So that's going through the court system right now. Virginia Attorney General's office responded to my lawsuit and filed a demurrer. Um, and that's a legal term for like objecting to my lawsuit. And they, they went to like top-notch law schools, right? All these attorney general's office people. I'm not intimidated because I studied at Harvard. I studied at Brown University. I mean, I taught at Brown University as well, and I taught at UCLA. I studied at research that Cambridge University, Heidelberg University, Hebrew University of Jerusalem, like Harvard of each country, England, Germany, and Israel. I'm not intimidated by these words, you know. I mean, I'm an expert of Jewish law. I've been studying Jewish law for decades, and so yeah, so yeah. But anyway, so I responded to the demurrer. I submitted that. Virginia, state of Virginia, Attorney General's office should have received my demurrer. So I mailed it out, like early this week, before I filed the, court case, or demurrer, reply to demurrer in all of the circuit court. Yeah. Their demurrer was like 13 pages long. I don't know. It was like many, many pages. Mine was like just as long because I had to respond to everything, every point. But and it's clear. I, I, I clearly debunked every one of their positions. So yeah. So my name should be on the ballot in November 3rd. Um, yeah. So just take my name, Heerak Kim, when you vote. If for some reason, if you order the absentee ballot and my name is not on it, because it arrived earlier or whatever, just make sure you write my name in, Heerak Kim. If you go to my website, HeerakFreeCongress.com, you can see my full name, and you can see my full name here too, Heerak Kim. Yeah, so vote for me on November 3rd. Yes, I have a picture of Arlington Circuit Court there because I went there. Like you have to go there and you can't bring a phone in. You have to wear a mask. And I went inside. There's like nobody there. It's like completely empty. you know. So I went all the way up to like, I guess it was sixth floor to file my, reply to the mirror. Yeah, the police officers were nice. The people checking us in. I guess they're police officers or deputy. There was this really pretty lady, I guess, either deputy in the sheriff's office or like a police officer. She was very attractive. She was tall, and yeah, I guess there are a lot of attractive police officers and deputies, sheriff's deputies in Virginia. you know, yeah. So yeah, see, I do look at all the things I do for you. I'm trying to like help your family survive COVID-19 with this show. And I'm like fighting for you in the court system so I could be on the ballot so that you can have the lucky opportunity to have me as your congressman. Look at all the things I'm doing for you, I fight for you. You should fight for me, right? um, yeah, in 24 hours, we had 700 COVID-19 deaths. It seems like during the weekend, get a little bit, they get kind of slow. So it's probably higher than that, but it's the weekend. It's Friday night. So wait, it's Saturday night. That's why it's not Friday night. September 11th was Friday night. Yeah. So yeah, I was working on my dissertation. Doctor of Education dissertation today. The time was like flying by. I was like working so hard on that from morning to like evening. Because I'm working on my chapter 3 now. Methodology. I mean, it's like, yeah, so submitted like my final draft. I mean, it's been edited like a zillion times. But I worked on it all day today. It's my Saturday. I want to go out and have fun, but I mean, geez, I'm working on my Doctor of Education dissertation at American College of Education, where I'm the vice president of Kappa Delta Pi, which is an international honor society for education. So, I'm working on this doctoral dissertation, Doctor of Education, EDD period D period, Doctor of Education. It's a degree, highest degree for education. Um, and I'm writing my dissertation on how to improve urban public schools, especially like Black public schools, like in urban areas, inner city areas. Yeah, I have the formula to save inner city Black education. I delivered my paper at Kappa Delta Pi annual convocation conference, which was in Norfolk, Virginia in October of 2019. So it was just like last fall. I presented 2 papers which were really well received about urban education. So yeah, I'm playing a very important role trying to save break the cycle of poverty in African American communities, and to improve urban education in all 50 states. So I guess I'm a savior with a small s, in terms of urban education and for African American communities. As you know, I got my teacher education, teacher licensing education at Virginia Union University, which is a historically black college and university, HBCU. Yeah, so I was like the only non-black person in many classes. So yeah, so I mean, I'm very excited to be saving what I call my people by black people. I mean, I'm like an honorary black person in a way because I went to historically black college and university. I was like the only non-black person, but it's like that's like the story of my life. When I was at Philmont Christian Academy, in the 11th grade, I joined the Black Gospel Choir. I was the only non-black person to join it. And we used to generally go to all black churches. There are big black churches in Philadelphia. Philmont Christian Academy is in Erdenheim, Pennsylvania, and it's a suburb of Philadelphia. And we used to go to these black churches that have thousands of church members. Some have like over 10,000, and sing, Black Gospel Choir songs. It's like everybody's black. I was like the only non-black person there. The whole church. Yeah, everybody was black. It's like a black church. And so, yeah, so I sang in gospel choir as the only non-black person in 11th grade. And in 12th grade, John Crispin, son of Reverend Crispin, joined. So two of us were the only non-black people in the gospel choir. And Reverend Crispin at that time was director of Center for Urban Theological Studies, CUTS, which is part of Westminster Theological Seminary, but CUTS is in the inner city. So John Crispin used to go to Masterman High School in Center City area, and then he transferred over to go to Philmont Christian Academy. And then he went to Geneva College, got his studied psychology and became a Christian psychologist. Yeah, so yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but yeah, my tradition, my belongingness in the black community goes way back. Way back when I was first immigrated to America, my first best friend was black in my neighborhood of Logan, Philadelphia, which is a very, it's basically black, completely black neighborhood, economically depressed. Um, my family got robbed 3 times when we were sleeping. Like we went to sleep, we woke up the next morning and we were robbed. I'm like, what happened? How come we didn't hear anything? It happened like 3 times. Yeah, in the Logan neighborhood. But yeah, memories. But yeah, so it's my experience with the black community goes all the way back to the very beginning of my, like the first day of my arriving as an FOB, fresh off the boat. I mean, it was fresh off the plane, FOP, FOP. But yeah, you know, so I have long history with the black people of America. Yeah. Um, yeah, what can I say? So I'm like an honorary black person. Yeah, there aren't that many black people in Virginia's 8th district though. So, oh well. The biggest minority in Virginia's 8th district is Hispanic. Um, yeah, so that's the biggest. Yeah, there's about similar number of Asians and black minorities in Virginia's 8th district. Yeah, so it's not like black people are like, I mean, Washington D.C. is, I think, over 50% black, but Virginia's 8th district isn't. So yeah, oh well, but yeah, but sometimes I see black people in Arlington. I see mostly Hispanics, and white. Like in my neighborhood, it's mostly Hispanics, but yeah, I see black people once in a while in Arlington area. But I see mostly Hispanic people, Arabic people. I do see like Ethiopians and Eritreans, but I mean like African Americans, people being here. Like you could tell they speak like their language, Amharic. So yeah, they're immigrants. So I mean, there are African Americans, but they're more like they're more Africans. They kind of look back to Ethiopia and Eritrea. Um, by the way, Eritrea has zero death from COVID-19. Can you believe that? Zero death. Yeah, zero death. Eritrea has zero death from COVID-19 from very beginning to now. Can you imagine that? There are several countries where they have zero deaths. Did you know that? There are several countries with zero COVID-19 deaths. Yeah, but that's not our country. United States of America, we have 702 deaths in 24 hours, which is really sad. That's a lot of people dying every day. We have like average of 1,000 every day right now. It's still summer. Um, so we have total of 198,670 deaths. Um, and confirmed cases is 6,482,503. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a summer, so nobody should be dying really. Obviously, I blame U.S. Supreme Court and Kavanaugh, especially in the U.S. Supreme Court, who pushed to give LGBTQ like work protections in June, triggering a second wave. Because God responds right away. Because God is God. When he gets upset, angry, God has anger management issues. He just lashes out. That's what God is. We see that in the New Testament and the Old Testament. God getting angry and just like lashing out or sending punishment. That's why you gotta be careful around God. Holy Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, because God has anger management issue. He gets angry and sometimes he doesn't control his anger. He just lets it go. Like when ancient Israelites built the golden calf, like God just like killed them all. Yeah, and they're like believers. They're like church going people. God got angry and just like killed them. That's what God does. Yeah, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. It's pretty scary stuff. But this is why God says, "Fear of the Lord is beginning of wisdom." That's why I would encourage you not to go to church that flies rainbow flag, because you're putting yourself and your children uh, at the risk of the wrath of God. And we do have COVID-19. I mean, you don't want to like put a bullseye on your family, but like rainbow flag looks like a bullseye, like a square bullseye. You don't want to put a bullseye on your family. Oh God, send your angel of death to like kill everybody in my family because we're flying the rainbow flag, or we go to church that flies the rainbow flag. You don't want to do that. Because as I said, God has anger management issues. So don't endanger your life unnecessarily by going to a church with rainbow flag. I mean, just for your sake, I'm just telling you this. You do what you want. You're not a slave. But as you know, I'm an expert theologian. I train Christian theologians and Christian pastors in India who want to be Presbyterian clergy. Um, and so, there are Indian Presbyterian pastors in America who I train. Um, because Indians immigrate to America, and sometimes pastors come pastor these churches because we're growing Indian community. Oh, what's happening in India is so sad. They have like over 1,000 people dying every day now, and that toll is growing. And you know how hot it is in India? Oh my gosh! I mean, it's like over 100 degrees in many places. And like so many people are dying now. Can you imagine what's going to happen like in the flu season? I feel so bad for India. Like, I bet every Indian in America will have a relative who dies. You know, because millions of people are going to die in India. I mean, it's sad. It's very, very sad. It's number 2 now. India used to have like less than 1,000 deaths. Do you remember? Just go back to like my show from like April. India less than 1,000 deaths. And look where it is now. It's horrible. And the sad thing is this could happen in the Middle East. You see my photos from Israel. Right below my photo is Leah. She was. There were um, two Israeli students who were chosen for Raoul Scholarship. There were 10 of us from America. Leah was one of the Israelis chosen for to be an Israeli Columbus scholar. She's from Hebrew University, and she's really nice. I really liked her. We spent a lot of time just like hanging out, and I just hang out all the time in her apartment, and yeah, we had a lot of fun, and next to that is Adva. Oh, I love Adva. Adva Gal. She's from Ramat Hasharon. No, Herzliya. She's from Herzliya. Um, and so she's like, one of these Ashkenazi Jews who's like privileged, very wealthy. Both of her parents are very distinguished. She served in the Israeli army as an intelligence officer. Very, very smart, obviously, because she's intelligent. That's why she was an intelligence officer. And yeah, I love spending time with her. She's pretty, blonde hair, blue eyed. Yeah. So yeah. Some of my short stories kind of have her in it, but not with her name though. You should read my short stories. I've written Romeo and Juliet in Jerusalem. I've written Jewish and Indian and other stories. So yeah, she's one of the figures in the story. You can try to guess which one. Um, yeah, and next to that is Hillary Coyne. Now she's Hillary Coyne Brill. She was at Harvard and she represented Harvard at Raoul Wallenberg Scholars Program, or Raoul Wallenberg. She was one of the Raoul Wallenberg Scholars representing Harvard. I represented UCLA, and yeah, she married her boyfriend of 3 years at Harvard University, and she went to Georgetown University Law School. Now she's an adjunct professor at Georgetown, and she practices law. She's pretty. You should see how pretty she is. She's very, very nice body. She's very nice face. Very, very pretty. Yeah. I mean, um, yeah. She used to run like miles every day to keep her figure. But yeah, see, smart women like Hillary, uh, they get the guy they're going to marry in college. That's what smart girls do. They go to college and they prioritize finding a guy they're going to marry because your height of your beauty is like 18 to 22. So you have to maximize that, leverage it to marry. So there are smart women like Hillary Coyne who leverages it and makes sure she finds a guy who's worthy of her, and that she loves, who loves her. She's at the height of her beauty, 18 to 22. She grabs that guy, she marries that guy. You see, that's what smart women do. You should be like Hillary Clinton. She's it's too bad. Georgetown campus is closed because of COVID. So it's 100% online for undergraduates, 100% online for graduate students. But if yeah, I mean, you could get some advice from Hillary about being smart in life and marrying a guy. Yeah, when you're in college, 18 to 22, you should definitely zero in on a guy you want to marry and make sure you get him. I mean, you're not a woman if you can't get the guy to propose to you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we talk about women's wiles, feminine charm. I mean, that's been written about in poetry for like hundreds, thousands of years. If you can't get the guy you love and get him to commit to you in marriage, and you're not a woman, really. That's what being a woman is. That's woman's power, right? Hillary Coyne Brill absolutely has that. Yeah, she's beautiful. You should have seen her right out of Harvard. You should have seen how pretty she was when she was like 21 or 22. Yeah. That was like she was 3 years into a serious relationship with this Brill guy. Yeah. Um, and next to that is Yael. She served in the Israeli commando unit. Can you believe? Because you have Israeli commando unit for men and women. Doesn't she have the body structure of a commando? Yeah, she served in the Israeli commando unit. Like they do top secret missions. Like when American commandos went in to kill Bin Laden. That's what she did. She's a commando. Yeah, she's a commando. And I think she was our tour guide, but I think she was kind of like our bodyguard. She always had a knapsack behind her. I think it's like it's a semi-automatic pistol or whatever. I don't know. I didn't check, but wherever we went, because that picture is from Jordan. Wherever we went, she was there with her little knapsack behind her. I think she was our bodyguard. You know, she's like a commander. you know, but she's pretty and she's nice. I just spending time with her. Next to that is the photo of Hillary, and next to her, in front of her is Nami Ando. She represents Swarthmore College, which is in Pennsylvania. It's an elite liberal arts college. You know, some people say Swarthmore is number one. Liberal arts college. Some people say Williams College in Massachusetts number one. You know, they go back and forth. Um, and Nami Ando's from Japan. I believe she was Japanese citizen. But yeah, Nami Ando, she's nice, you know. And that's shawarma. It's like it's a meat, um, that is like kind of grilled. It's so good. Tastes so good. I miss shawarma so much. Um, there are some places in Ellington where you can have shawarma. Yeah, there's Arabic places. Um, you know, yeah, it's good stuff. Just try it if you're in Arlington. If you haven't had it before, it's called shawarma. Well, that's why we called it in Israel, shawarma. Um, so yeah, so Middle East, there are top five there. Iran is a little bit high, but you know it was high before, but now in comparison to India, it's like tiny. You know, Brazil and India. Um, Iran, number one cases in Middle East has 399,940. I mean, it's far less than Florida, far less than Texas, far less than California. Their death rate is a 6%, so 23,029 have died. Saudi Arabia is number two, and it's disturbing. Saudi Arabia's deaths are rising. It's very bad news for Saudi Arabia, because as I told you, Eritrea, and there are a lot of Eritreans in Washington D.C. area. In fact, I think the greatest number of Eritreans in America are in Washington D.C. area. Um, Eritrea and Ethiopia are like neighboring countries in Africa. There are zero COVID-19 death in Eritrea, zero. So when you look at Saudi Arabia with 4,240, I don't know, they're doing something wrong because their death rate is rising. It's the problem. I don't know maybe they made a deal with the devil. Who knows? You know? And they're doing something wrong with the rising death rate. Iraq is number three. Number three, numeral three. Yeah, I don't know Spanish. I know French, German, Hebrew, Korean, and other languages. Like I could speak Arabic as well. But you know, um, but yeah, not Spanish. And all my neighbors Spanish, like you're speaking. So I gotta learn Spanish, you know. But I have so many other things I have to learn first. So Spanish has to wait. you know. Um, yeah. So yeah, Iraq has 7,941 deaths. So it's higher than Saudi Arabia at 4,240. Um, Israel is number four. Israel should be worried. Their death rate is rising. Anytime you pass 1,000, it's a worry something. Because if you pass 1,000, you could. I mean, do you remember when India was under 1,000? We used to talk about that all the time, like in April. But look at where it is now. That's where Israel can be too. So I would worry if I were in Israel because they're having cases grow, they're having deaths grow. You pass 1,000. If you could have 1,000 deaths, you could have 100,000 deaths. Yeah. So everybody in Israel should worry. Um, so Israel has 152,722 cases. Their death rate is still low, but it's rising 0.7% because Israel wasn't on the radar in the top five before, but now it's like number four. 1,103 have died. Obviously, it's like one day's work in America. 1 day or 2 days, we have more than we have 1,000 deaths per day. Like yesterday, we had over 1,200 deaths. So 1 day, But still, Israel has to worry because their death rate is rising. Qatar obviously is much less than Israel, 121,523. Their death rate is at 0.2%, far lower than Israel. 205 people died. But remember, Eritrea has 0 people who died. The whole country, 0. No one died of COVID in Eritrea. So that's, you have to remember things like that because that's relevant. Um, yeah. So yeah, don't forget to vote for me for Virginia's 8th district. I'm Heerak, Christian Kim, independent candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th district. Yeah, because you need me to save you from COVID and other things that are happening right now. Well, recently, we've been hearing about what? The treaty between Israel and Arab nations, right? They made a treaty with what? United Arab Emirates. Um, and I guess they start making treaty with several other Arabic nations as well. Is it Bahrain? Um, and they're making peace with several other Arabic nations. Now the question is it good or is it bad? Right? Does it hurt Israel or does it help Israel? Does it hurt United Arab Emirates or does it help United Arab Emirates? What's in it for Israel? What's in it for United Arab Emirates? These are the questions they have to be asking. I would argue because at the end of the day, allegiances could save you, or alliances can save you, but alliances can destroy you. A good example of that is, South, like not South Korea, because there was only one Korea in 1900. In 1905, Korea, the Queen of Korea, was last monarch of the Yi dynasty. Queen of Korea made an alliance um, with Japan. And, we thought this would be good. The Japanese government said, well, we want an East Asia co-prosperity sphere where all of us become wealthy together. And we're in the same region, Korea and Japan, China. Why don't we make alliances and trade and, why don't we do things to ensure that our region becomes wealthy and that there's no animosity, because Korea used to fight Japan all the time. China used to fight Japan all the time as well. So Japan said, well, let's just make alliances so we don't fight each other. We just help each other to become wealthy. And so Japan called that East Asia co-prosperity sphere. So, the queen being a woman, women tend to be a little bit softy when it comes to these peace agreements, right? World is not that simple, but women tend to be kind of simple-minded when it comes to oh, let's create peace in the world. Oh, zero emissions will make all of us good. Women are a little bit naive about the world. That's why they make really bad leaders. Um, and so, like political leaders, because they don't see things logically, they see things emotionally, right? Emotionally, they're like, oh, we want a world which is peaceful and loving and helping each other. And yeah, why don't we just do that? It's like, no, people are not that simple. You know what I'm saying? If people can just agree to get along and get along, there will be no wars in the world. You know what I'm saying? There will be no economic competition. But it doesn't work that way. Um, and women tend to be really, really naive about human nature, about the evil that can happen in the world through alliances. People don't get along. We're not all in it together. But they make these, oh, we're in it together. This is why I don't believe the liberal media. They keep lying to us and telling us everybody's in it together. No, there are billionaires in America. There are millionaires in America. They're not in it together with working class Joe in Washington D.C. Come on, why are you trying to fool here? Everybody's not in it together. Everybody's in it, but not together. You see what I'm saying? Some suffer more than others. Healthcare experts say that Latinos have much higher chance of dying than Black people from COVID-19. So you may see 1 million Latinos die in the wintertime. That's what I'm predicting here at Christian Team Independent Candidate for U.S. Congress, that 1 million minimum Latinos would die in the United States during the flu season. And there's several problems that is driving that figure to 1 million. A lot of Latinos are overweight. I mean, which is a shame. Uh, but if you're overweight, the chance of dying is higher with COVID. So I'm worried about my Latino neighbors, you know. I mean, actually, many of my Latino neighbors are very physically fit. So I actually worry about my weight. But there are Latinos who are overweight, and I worry about them, you know. Yeah, so yeah, you need to get an exercise bike for your home, like stationary exercise bike. You know, just ride that thing for an hour every day at home. You don't have to go anywhere. Just get a stationary bike, ride it for a day, for like an hour a day. Um, yeah, so yeah, there are things you gotta do to make sure you're gonna stay healthy, right? Get your exercise. Um, yeah, so but yeah, I worry about Latinos, and they say far more Latinos will die than Black Americans. Um, but they say that far more Black Americans will die than white Americans. Yeah, so it's a worrisome flu season that's coming. We may have massive numbers of Black people die as well, which is an unfortunate thing. They say marijuana makes you more susceptible to COVID-19 death. Some studies have shown. I mean, I don't know what the conclusion is, or because COVID-19 is about only like 8 months old or whatever, 9 months old. So nobody has conclusive study on anything, but that's one of the studies. People who do marijuana have higher chance of dying. That may explain why a lot of Americans are dying. You might have tried marijuana, you may still do marijuana. A lot of the chemicals you do, like marijuana and cocaine and heroin, some of these stay in your system, your body system. So, your body may not be able to fend off COVID-19 and its death. Whereas if you've never done marijuana or cocaine or illicit drugs, then you have a better chance of surviving COVID. Like Eritrea, you can't do drugs. You know, they kill people who carry like X number of ounces of uh, cocaine in many countries. Like Singapore, it still only has 27 deaths. Remember, I was saying in April how boring it is that Singapore only has 27 deaths. It still only has 27 deaths. No one has died. Can you believe that? And in Singapore, if you get arrested with like I don't know how many ounces of cocaine, it's a death penalty. So people are not doing drugs because you have death penalty for drugs. So nobody's dying. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think drugs. I mean, I think these researchers have something hit on something. If you like do drugs, like cocaine or marijuana, yeah, it seems like you have a higher chance of dying. I mean, at least statistically, when we see countries with frequent drug use and non-frequent drug use, I mean, there's definitely a correlation there. Somebody should do a study. Maybe write a doctoral dissertation on it. I mean, that'd be great if we could get some concrete data and research, evidence-based research on this. Yeah, but the problem with this alliance is this, right? When God told Joshua to conquer Canaan, God said, "Do not make alliances with Gentile nations around you." So that includes like all the Gentile nations in Palestine or Israel, but it also includes other Gentile nations around Israel. So the problem is, how serious was God about that, and it being an eternal command? Obviously, the Hasidic Jews or Haredi Jews, Shomerim, like these Jews who are like wearing black hat, black jacket, black pants, and have earlocks down their hair, like it's like twisted hair, earlocks, like you see in Brooklyn or New York. But they're Orthodox, ultra Orthodox Jews in every state. We have them in Maryland and Virginia. Um, so you know, They believe that. They believe that if you make alliances with Gentiles, then God will punish the Jews. They believe that stuff, that they believe that God will still punish them. So let's see. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I mean, they're not modern Orthodox. Some modern Orthodox believe that too. Obviously, Jared Kushner doesn't believe it because he's running around trying to make alliances with Arab nations. Is he a modern Orthodox? I don't know. Maybe he's more like conservative because he doesn't wear a kippah, like a little religious hat. Although, Professor John Levinson at Harvard, he's Orthodox Jewish rabbi, did his PhD at Yale and is List Professor of Jewish Studies. He's Orthodox, but he doesn't wear a kippah. I asked him about it. I said, why don't you wear a kippah? We have a good relationship, so I'm going to ask him when I'm curious. And he's like, it's not required. It's not that. It's majority. So it's a tradition, not a hawk, like a law. So it's not absolutely required. I think that's open to interpretation because I think some Orthodox religious Jews say it's required. And I've heard debate about this in modern Hebrew in Israeli radio when I was living in Israel. Like several Orthodox Jews were debating this. It was kind of interesting hearing different sides. But obviously, Jared Kushner doesn't wear a kippah like day to day, every day. So I guess we understand which side of the argument he falls under. But also some people say Orthodox Jews who don't wear a kippah, they tend to be more liberal. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess that makes sense, because if you're not observing the traditions very carefully, let's say it's tradition that not law. Still, if you're not observing the tradition, then you could say you're kind of liberal. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know what Orthodox Jews think about Jared Kushner running around trying to make alliances with Arab nations. I don't know if they see Jared Kushner as an enemy of the Orthodox Judaism or ultra-Orthodox Judaism or of Israel even, or if they see them as a friend. I don't know. I worry about Jared Kushner's life because, I lived in Israel for over 3 years. And, the Orthodox Jews, they could be a little bit violent when it comes to their religion and their traditions, especially, um, when it comes to like core values. And, like the way Orthodox Jews form coalitions in the Israeli Knesset, which is like Israeli government, legislative branch or parliament, they call it the Knesset in Jerusalem, is Orthodox Jews leverage the fact that Israeli government needs a majority to rule, and Israel doesn't have a simple majority in any of the party. It's not like America with the Republican and Democrats, where there's many parties. So whichever government wins the election in Israel, they need the ultra-Orthodox parties, which are few in number, but they tip the majority. So Orthodox Jewish political parties, and I met representatives of ultra-Orthodox parties when I was in Israel, because I was in the Raoul Wallenberg program with, Nami Ando and, you know, um, and Mrs. Brill. um, and so, yeah, so, we met some, like Benny Alon, ultra religious party leader. And, we got to talk about some issues. Really nice guy, Benny Alon. But, yeah, but, they leverage their political chip to ensure that Israel tries to observe the Old Testament concept, like not making alliances with Gentile nations, like Arabic nations, nations around Israel, and also territorial integrity in Israel. So I know that when Jared Kushner or Jared Kushner was involved in having Israel make alliances with United Arab Emirates, they promised United Arab Emirates that they would hand over um, like Palestinian areas to Palestine, Palestinians, and ultra-Orthodox Jews, both in America and Israel, actually all over the world, Australia, because Australia is where the uh, I think Chabad movement started in Australia, right? There are there's a big Australian Jewish community, Orthodox Jewish community, like ultra Orthodox Jewish community wearing like black hat, black, pants and everything. Um, and you have the Lubavitches International, we're Orthodox, um, and ultra Orthodox. Um, I know they are upset. I'm sure they're very angry at it because it's in one of their core values. So I don't know what's going on between the Kushners. Are the Kushners like just modern Orthodox? I guess they're not ultra Orthodox. I mean, there are ultra Orthodox people who are millionaire and billionaire real estate developers. Um, but yeah, I know ultra Orthodox people would have a problem with like making alliances, giving Eretz Israel. They call it Eretz Israel, land of Israel away. Eretz Israel includes like part of Jordan. It includes a lot of like whole kingdom of David, and they don't want to give any of that away. So, like at the height of the rule of Israel, the Davidic kingdom, uh, you know, which includes part of Syria, like Golan Heights, and beyond, and Jordan, part of Jordan, part of Egypt. They want all of that, restored, or ultra Orthodox Jews, and they're maneuvering within the Knesset political system to do that. So I don't know what these alliances mean for Jared Kushner and the Kushner family. Some Orthodox Jews, ultra Orthodox Jews, may see Jared Kushner as like embodiment of evil, because they may say, well, in the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, God commanded don't make alliances with nations around them, and they take that very seriously. Many ultra Orthodox Jews. So I don't know if that means like Jared Kushner will have to worry about violence from ultra Orthodox Jewish community or members or not? Because I know there have been several killings in Israel, ultra Orthodox, of like people that Jewish people, like Jews killing Jews, ultra Orthodox Jews killing Jews, who they thought was violating Jewish integrity, Jewish integrity as a nation. So they see them like as traitors. So I don't know if right now, as I'm speaking to you and you're hearing me, um, if some Jews consider Jared Kushner and the Kushner family the enemy of the Jewish people. I don't know. There may be ultra Jewish communities which may have made up effigies of Jared Kushner. We don't know. I mean, right now we don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's going on in certain Orthodox Jewish communities, ultra Orthodox Jewish communities around the world. Even modern Orthodox, some of the modern Orthodox communities don't they follow like traditions. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, let's see. You had David fighting Goliath. Even if Israel is a small nation and the nations that are around it are big, they went out of their way not to make alliances, to observe that commandment of God to Joshua. So we don't know. I mean, some say that when Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and the Jerusalem temple, part of the problem was, and you can read Isaiah and Jeremiah about it, Israel was compromised. Israel was becoming like Gentile nations and kind of, like making alliances. Um, so some people, even some Orthodox Jewish people, would say making alliances with nations around them in violation of, God's commandment during Joshua's conquest could bring down Israel, destruction of Israel. Let's see, what they say. Let's see if that's the destiny for Israel. We don't know. Obviously, you know, non-Jews don't think of it the way that Orthodox Jews think, right, about this issue. And Orthodox Jews have been thinking about this issue in this way for thousands of years, you know. And you can't really, it's hard to relate if you're not an Orthodox Jew, right? Because their worldview is kind of fashioned by that. You can read the book The Chosen by Chaim Potak. And you kind of understand some of the ways Orthodox Jews talk and think about issues. Chaim Potak's son, Akiva Potak, actually went to University of Pennsylvania. And I guess he was majoring in film studies or something. So he wanted to be a filmmaker. Um, and like my friend, you know, Eugene Geiser, who went to seminary at Philadelphia Lutheran Seminary, became an ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church minister, senior pastor at Feasterville, Pennsylvania. He married Erica. You know, like he was a student pastor. Met her at the church where he was a student pastor. And they married her. You know, so yeah, yeah, they're a really pretty couple, cute couple. Um, but yeah, so you know, yeah, learn a little bit more about Orthodox Jewish community. The Chosen is good. Um, yeah, I mean, I really like The Chosen. We read it for class at Philmont Christian Academy. But you know, Joe Garver, who was one of my best friends at the time, who's now a professor of philosophy at LaSalle University, he was really into Chaim Potak's books, and you know, we used to talk on the phone about it, like sometimes over an hour, you know. And so, you know, I got into Chaim Potak, and you know, I read like a lot of his other books, like you know, The Promise, you know, My Name Is Actually Legs, yeah, and Eugene Geiser got one of my books signed by Chaim Potak through Akiva. You know, that was kind of nice, you know, nice of him. Next to the photo of Babylonians destroying Jerusalem and the Temple of God is Roman destroying Jerusalem. That was in 70 AD. Yeah, it's you know, King Herod was king of the Jews. He converted to Judaism. He used to be Idumean, so they call him Herod the Idumean, but he converted to Judaism. That's how he became the Jewish king, Herod. Um, some say like Ivanka Trump is like a female version of that because she converted to Judaism and then she's like kind of, you know, I don't know how powerful she is or not, but some people, like I see the tweet and somebody's like, oh, Ivanka Trump is really powerful. I'm like, I don't know. Does she even have a position? Isn't she like an advisor in the White House? I think there are like a lot of advisors. I don't know. I don't know what her position is in the White House, but um, yeah. I guess if we had a monarchy, she'd be like princess, but we don't have a monarchy, so yeah, that's gone. But yeah, but anyway, King Herod converted to Judaism. Um, you know, was the Jewish king, and he's kind of notorious in the New Testament. They say converts to a religion can be more zealous and more scary because they're trying to prove. They feel like they need to prove something to themselves or to their co-religionists or to the world. I don't know. That's one of the theories. As you know, I'm an expert of religion. So one of the strains of interpretation within religious studies as an academic disciplines is the concept of the proselytizing or fundamentalism of new proselytes, you know, new acolytes or converts. Um, yeah, and you know, some have seen Paul through those lens. So very famous professor at Columbia University. He's actually with the Barnard College, Alan Segal. He wrote the book Paul the Convert from the Spanish book. He converting, and Alan Segal, you know, he was a professor of religion at Barnard College, which is part of Columbia University. And you know, but he's not the only one. There are others who wrote on concept of Paul as convert, and what drove Paul to be so fanatical or fundamentalist. And a lot of Christian theologians say Christian religion is Pauline religion. It's not a religion that's modeled after Peter. Uh, so Christian religion as we have it now is more Pauline, modeled after Paul. And so a lot of Christian theologians have interest in studying Paul, and scholars of religion like to study him from the vantage point of conversion, because he was a Jew, the Pharisee of the Pharisees, the New Testament says, who used to go around persecuting Christians. And in Book of Acts, when Saint Stephen was getting killed, because Saint Stephen accused Jews of having killed Jesus, and Jews got really pissed off. It's like nothing changes. Jews in every century get pissed off when you say that. It's in the Bible. Well, you know, geez, it's in the Bible. We're just talking about the Bible. But yeah, but so the first Christian martyr was killed because he said Jews killed Jesus. You know, yeah. But anyway, King Saul was there. I mean, not King Saul. Saul was there. Yeah. So Alan Siegel's book was great. You know, I read that book when I was at UCLA in the PhD program there. And you know, we talked about conversion as a phenomenon. It was kind of interesting stuff, you know. Yeah, yeah. I remember when Alice Siegel died. I actually made a donation to I think it was American Academy of Religion in his memory. Yeah, I think American Academy of Religion mailed it out to his you know, mailbox at Bernard College. So he's, you know, his family members might have gotten it. Yeah, he's a nice guy, you know. Alan Siegel. I mean, there are a lot of interesting people, you know, in academic conferences I go to. As you know, I hobnob with all the top Jewish studies experts in the world. Like personally, I meet them and know them. You know, some of them are my friends, some are acquaintances, you know, but you know, we're like, you know, go to conferences. Yeah, so yeah, I when I was in Israel, I used to see Lawrence Shifkin all the time. I think I got pissed because I wrote a book and I attacked his theory of like 20 years. I deconstructed it, demolished it, you know. You should read my book. Um, yeah, but you know, that's what we do in academia. You know, we like kind of propose a theory, you know, attack other people's theory, you know, we attack the consensus, you know. I'm very good at what I do, you know, and and so I challenge, you know, the consensus of the greatest minds in Jewish studies. I generally win, you know, which upsets them, obviously. If you've done like 20, 30 years life's work on something and it's demolished in a book, you know, you'd be upset too, you know, right? Um, yeah. Oh, anyway, you know, I have my book there, Jewish Law and Identity. You may want to have a read. You could get my book, Jewish Law and Identity, through libraries, obviously. You have an access to library, you could order it through interlibrary loan, or maybe your university or college has it. Maybe just borrow it. Or you could purchase it from like Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. You can have your personal copy of my book. You can read it over and over again, turning the fresh pages, looking at the notes. This audiobook doesn't have the notes, so you're going to miss out everything that I wrote on the notes. You should see sometimes my notes are bigger than the text. Yeah, like in one page, half of it is text, half is notes. I write like paragraphs after paragraphs in notes, clarifying some fine points on the text. In the audiobook, you only hear the text, so you miss out on a lot. So that's why you may want to get a paper copy of my book to look at the notes, because sometimes notes are more significant than the text. Yeah, but yeah, you'll definitely learn something, you know, because I'm one of the world's best scholars in Jewish studies. I'm an expert of Jewish identity, group identity, propaganda warfare. You know, because when you talk about identity and group identity, necessarily you study the conflicts by different groups within Judaism, right? Obviously, they want to use propaganda to fight each other. So, and sometimes you have civil war. You have the Jewish civil war several times. So that's why I am My expertise is Jewish identity, individual identity, and group identity, but that necessarily includes internecine conflicts, uh, concepts of legitimacy, where different individuals are fighting to become the top honcho leader of a group, right? Because that happens in every group. Everybody's like muscling their way to the top. So when you're looking at identity and group, obviously it includes concept of legitimacy, delegitimacy, popular consent, authority, these are key elements involved in power struggles in every group. And group can be small, it could be big, but you have similar phenomena um, in terms of people trying to obtain ultimate power. Sometimes they do it through peaceful means, sometimes they do it through violent means. So I study that. And that's why I'm an expert also of propaganda warfare, um, and regime change. Because in ancient Israel, there have been regime changes too, and so during the Hasmonean period, during the Maccabees, when you celebrate Hanukkah, you're celebrating a regime change. Yeah, Hanukkah celebrates a regime change from Davidic monarchy to the Hasmonean monarchy. So Hasmonean monarchy are non-Davidic kings. So, when you celebrate Hanukkah, you're actually celebrating the Davidic monarchy. Yeah, it was a tragic part of ancient Israelite history because Hanukkah was a period when Syria, attacked Israel and was, basically desecrated the Jerusalem temple and was going to conquer it and occupy it. A bunch of countryside hillbilly, they formed a militia, the Judas Maccabee. They called it Judas Maccabee the Hammer. So these like bunch of hillbillies, no unknown priests who armed themselves and armed all the other hillbilly priests and all their church members, the synagogue members. They just came from the countryside and drove away the Syrian army. Obviously, Syrian army is mighty, but they didn't really they didn't want the headache of having colonized, to colonize Israel, which was to the advantage of the hillbillies, right? Because Syria was not that committed in occupying Israel because they didn't want the headache. And they felt that, when they did, cost benefit analysis, they thought the cost was too high. So they weren't willing to lose a lot of their soldiers' lives, prolonged war, because they thought the benefit would not be that much. Obviously, Judas Maccabee did not know this because it was country bumpkin priest, fundamentalist priest, who formed a militia with his followers and other country bumpkin priests. But you have much more countryside. Rust Belt is pretty big in any country. So he was able to gather a lot of these country bumpkin, patriots, who are willing to arm themselves with, what's equivalent to today's, AK-47s. Train themselves. They're training each other, to shoot, so to speak, in the ancient world. And then they resisted the invaders, and many of them died. But, Syria thought it wasn't worth it. After, many of their soldiers died, they pulled back. And obviously, to the Israelites who were there, the country bumpkins, the rustics, it looked like they won, when in fact it wasn't really victory per se. It's just that Syria pulled back their troops because they're like, Syria was fighting Egypt, Syria had other wars, they were like thinly stretched. It's like Israel's not worth it. That's why they left. But it made Judas Maccabee look like a big hero. Um, you know, because Syrians did leave, and leaving is like defeat, right? And so so they were held as the victors, and people kind of gave them their allegiances, but they weren't in the Davidic line. The so 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 the royalty, the you know and the priests were Davidic priests, Zadokite priests. You know, obviously Zadokite priests were like these courtly, you know, noble types, highly educated, very liberal-minded, very progressive, speak several languages. And these country bumpkin priests, you know, who were uncouth, you know, who were seen as rustics, you know, hillbillies, you know, but you know, hillbillies sometimes want power, right? So these hillbilly priests with no lineage, no luminaries or important people in their whole line of priests, they got the people on their side and they made a power grab, and they ended up succeeding because they were seen as like national heroes for quote driving out the Syrians. So people were behind them, and then they start killing the Zadokite priests, who are the legitimate priests. Zadok was the priest of King David, and it was that line who were high priests of Jerusalem temple. So, uh, so these Judas Maccabee, the hero of Hannukah story, start killing off the legitimate priests, and all the Zadokite priests, the nobles, went into hiding in Qumran. Qumran in the Dead Sea. That's where the Dead Sea scrolls were found, because they took the scrolls and ran away to Dead Sea, and they just continued hiding out from the Hasmoneans, Judas Maccabee and his country bumpkin priests who are armed with what is equivalent at that time to AK-47s, trigger happy. So they were hiding out, obviously, you know, hiding out in the desert, far away from Jerusalem, so they couldn't be killed. Because, you know, Judas Maccabee killed a lot of the priests, you know, and in the writings of the Zadokite priests, the legitimate priests who were pushed out, they refer to him as the wicked priest. Yeah. So, you know, one's hero is another's villain, right? But you know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the Zadokites were killed, and they escaped to the desert, and they're hoping to go back to Jerusalem to reclaim their position, but never happened. So at the time of Jesus, when Jesus was born, the priest in Jerusalem was of the actually the Herodian line, but also Hasmoneans were there too. Um, and legitimate priests were basically driven out. There's a theory that there were some legitimate priests who were left in Jerusalem, you know, but that's highly contested. You know, I'll go and get into this some other time, a little bit more at length. Um, and then, you know, some of the priests, they say, wow, we're never going to take Jerusalem. You know, these Zadokite priests were highly educated. So they went to Egypt and they set up a Jewish temple in Egypt, in Leontopolis. They're like, we're going to just have legitimate worship. We're going to build a temple here, a Jewish temple. And yeah, we're just going to worship here. It's kind of like when they had two popes in Middle Ages. You know, two people claimed to be popes, and obviously there was a pope in Rome, but there's another pope who claimed to be a pope who was in France, and you know, that conflict existed for a while. So it's kind of like that in a way. Um, so these Hasmonean priests were killing off Zadokite priests, legitimate priests, because they wanted power. You know, people do a lot of stuff for power, right? A lot of good people can become very corrupt. They can do a lot of corrupt things for power. And that's like in history, you know that. It happens in history a lot. And you probably have seen it in your workplace. People like doing all kinds of evil things for power. Um, Even good people. You know, good people become bad because of power. And so, so these legitimate priests who went to Leontopolis, set up Jerusalem temple, they had that operational for hundreds of years. So in Egypt, there were Jewish communities, both Jews who were loyal to the legitimate priests who moved to Egypt, and there were also diaspora Jews at that time. So they, you know, they ran this temple for a long time. Um, yeah, I mean, you know, Jewish history is interesting. You may never have heard about it, but I'm the expert to bring you all these interesting stuff. Yeah, so read my book, Jewish Law and Identity. Heerak Christian Candidate. you know, you type in the title and my name, you'll get it like in, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in Jewish history. Yeah. But, you know, as I said, you know, in history repeats itself and players are different, but similar things happen. Like when there were two popes in the Middle Ages. Right? It's kind of like having like two high priests, right? One in Jerusalem, who's like the country bumpkin illegitimate priest, but a legitimate temple. And then you had like legitimate priests, but an illegitimate temple in Egypt in Leontopolis, you know? Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. But, you know, we don't know, you know, if the Orthodox Jews are right, you know, this could bring about the collapse of Israel or disappearance of Israel, like within the framework or the type of Babylon and Rome. You know, who knows? History may repeat itself. Um, yeah, I mean, you know, um, but you know, doesn't mean it's good for Arabic countries either, right? Because you know, we see today, September 12th, the United Arab Emirates records its highest daily COVID-19 case, right? Increase today. Um, who knows? Maybe God's angry at both nations, you know, both Jews and Arabs. So, you know, we have to see, you know, what's going to happen. As you know, God blessed Ishmael, who's the ancestor of Arabic people, who's son of Hagar, who was the slave of Abraham, whom Abraham had sex with, Hagar, to have that Ishmael child, who converted to Judaism, got circumcised, but you know, converted back, you know, away from Judaism. But you know, God promised to bless Ishmaelites, who are present day Arabs. That's why Arabs have all this oil. God kept his promise, and wealth, because God said God will make Ishmael's descendants a great nation, and He did. But you know, who knows? You know, maybe this is not the smartest move by United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and other countries in Arab countries. I mean, time will tell because, as you know, history always explains where God was angry, where God wasn't angry. You know, from a spiritual angle. So right now, you know, Arab countries don't have that many deaths, but if Arabic countries start having death like you know, Brazil or India, you know, like massive number of deaths, or like Spain, Egypt, you know, Israel, no, not Israel, Spain, Italy, and England, or like Mexico, then we can say, well, maybe God was angry at Arabic countries because of the alliance that they made with Israel. Um, let's see, you know, I mean, you know, the question is, what did they compromise in the alliance, right? There are things that we know of that they tell us. There are things that we don't know of that happen behind closed doors. And if they made certain compromises that anger God, you know, God could punish, you know, Arabic nations with you know, COVID-19 death. So let's see, you know, from the very beginning of COVID to now, not too many Arabs have died. But let's see what happens in the next 6 months. Right? If not too many Arabs die in the next 6 months, then today is a fluke, not an immediate response by God. But if there's an exponential growth in death in Arabic countries, Arabic nations, especially the Arabic nations that made alliances with Israel, then obviously proof is in the pudding. Um, there is anger of God, right? That's how you know that there is an anger from God. I mean, Eritrea is zero death. Obviously, God's not angry with Eritrea. Because we believe God is in control of the world, right, Christians? So nothing happens in the world without God's providence or permission. So everything that happens in the world happens because of God's providence, guidance, or permission, which means there's a meaning behind everything that happens in the world. Right? It's not like haphazard. There's an order in the world. There's an order in the chaos. And you know, some people have talked about the chaos theory to explain that. There's an order in the chaos. Um, Yeah, I mean, events have a meaning. Things don't happen out of nowhere. And that's what human beings have believed since the beginning of time. You know, when there's a storm or disease or illness, famine, people have explained it as God's anger. You know, regardless of religion, Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, Zionism, Zoroastrianism, Persian religion, ancient Greco-Roman religion. So people have understood natural activities of the cosmos in terms of the divine, the divinity. And Romans chapter 1 talks about that, uh, everybody understands what God's law is through nature. Um, nature is a picture into how God operates. See what I'm saying? So nothing happens for no reason. Everything happens for a reason. So the fact that 1,000 Americans are dying every day is significant and has significant reason. And you can find the cause and effect, why this is happening in the Holy Bible. And I'm Heerak, independent candidate for U.S. Congress from Virginia's 8th District. I'm saying Romans chapter 1 provides the answer. Because God promised wrath of God for homosexuality. And second peak started soon after Kavanaugh and Supreme Court granted LGBTQ rights, which fits into the typos or the model or the law and order model of Romans chapter 1, right? You could say, well, there's a chance, but hey, how many coincidences do you need? Quote coincidence do you need to say that there's an intelligent design? You see what I'm saying? I mean, if you have like 5 different coincidences that follow a pattern, maybe it's not a coincidence, but a pattern. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, we are rational human beings, so we have minds that we could think through, right? If something is isolated and random and nothing ever happens that's similar, then you could say that's an isolated event. But if there's a pattern that keeps repeating itself, then there's a pattern, right? You can't say there isn't a pattern. There is a correlation, right? So the question is, if there is a correlation, is there cause and effect, right? If the pattern follows the same pattern every time, then it's reliable, right? Like, it's a reliable way to understand the pattern. Like, if you have A, B, C, D happening all the time, then if you have A, B, you're gonna have C and D, right? Because there's a pattern. There's a reliable testing, reliable repetition of the pattern is a reliable way to understand that that pattern is a valid pattern. You see what I'm saying? And that's why even if you don't believe in God, you should be worried if there is a pro-LGBTQ ruling or movement, because there's a pattern that is repeating. You cannot ignore. And the question is, even if you don't believe in God, how much are you willing to risk your life and the risk lives of your children by ignoring the pattern? You see what I'm saying? There is this pattern. So there are 3 reactions you can have, right? You could say, well, there is this pattern, it keeps repeating in similar circumstances, so there is a correlation. So you could take that step and say, well, there is a correlation. But I reject the fact, even though there is a correlation, I'm going to reject the fact that it's significant. That's one way you can respond. You could say, well, I don't care if there's a correlation or not, I'm just not going to think about it. That's another way people respond, right? Denial way, I mean, if there's a pattern, there's a pattern. Just a fact. Third way you can respond is there is a pattern, and I want to understand the significance of the pattern. Is there a cause and effect? Why does the pattern happen? And I think as rational beings, if there is a pattern, the second way of saying, I don't care if there's a pattern or not, I'm not going to worry about it. That's just not a rational way to go. That's not a way to survive anything. The first response, oh, there's a pattern. At least you're taking the first step to understand that there's a pattern. But the problem is you're rejecting the pattern and not thinking that it's significant. So my question is, why would you just throw out the pattern as being non-significant without studying it? Maybe it is significant. And the significance that you are not willing to study is the significance that may save you. You see what I'm saying? So even if you don't believe in God, the question is, from the vantage point of survival, do you think it's smart to study the pattern? Because patterns show us something about the cosmos, right? Let's say you don't believe in God. I mean, patterns are significant in and of themselves. Like, for example, if you feel pain somewhere in your body, it's saying it means something. It means there's something wrong there. You see what I'm saying? In the same way, if there's a pattern, then there must be some significance. From the vantage point of biology, from botany, from the vantage point of physics, chemistry, from veterinary science, from medicine, from nursing, we understand that certain patterns mean something. Like patterns always have meaning. That's what every science subject shows us. So if we see a pattern in any situation, we have to ask ourselves, what's the significance of this pattern, right? That is the rational way to go about understanding the world around us. And obviously some people don't want to live in a rational way, but that's what separated us from like animals. You know, some say animals have rational way of behaving. Um, it's hard to say because it's hard to communicate with animals. But the reason why some people say animals have a rational way of behaving is animals hear a sound and they run away from the source of the sound. Now you could say that's an instinct. But it may be a type of rationality, right? I hear a sound, therefore I must run away from the sound. Is it instinct or is it like a rational decision? So from that vantage point, it's possible that at a certain low frequency level, animals have a rationality. It's not purely instinctive. Now, how do we know that animals may not act purely out of instinct? You could potty train animals, right? To a certain extent. You can use behaviorism, reward system, punishment system, carrot stick, in order to get animals to do certain things. So animals do a trick for you, like a doggy or a cat does a trick for you, because you're gonna give them a doggy biscuit. So the dog knows if he when you go like this and he rolls and you give him a biscuit, the dog knows that doing this action will give him a biscuit. He'll get a biscuit. So it's hard to say that's an instinct, right? Instinct is like when you ping somebody with a pin, it goes, ouch, that's an instinct. But the dog is doing a certain behavior intentionally in order to receive a reward. And behaviorists talk about this as kind of modeling a behavior using reward and punishment. But I think we can still talk about rationality here, right? Because certain logical deductions have to be there, right? If I do this trick, I will get an award. At a simple level, that is a logical deduction, not an instinct. And so maybe there is a rationality to animals. I mean, I'm not an expert of animal sciences, but I'm making an observation. I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. So there are insights that I can provide in every discipline. I could zoology, chemistry, physics. that chemists and physicists may not be able to come up with, because I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. That's why there are a lot of geniuses watching this show. I'm sure Bill Gates is watching this show, who I consider a genius. And you're talking Fauci, who I consider a genius, is watching this show. Everybody's watching this show because I am the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. There's only one of me in 500 years. And what makes you a genius is that you are able to recognize that. If you cannot understand that Heerak Christian Kim is Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century, that's a proof positive you're not a genius, right? Because a genius can recognize genius. You understand what I'm saying? That's why everybody's watching this show. Because if you are a genius, then you understand genius at a certain level. Yeah, I mean, so people want to get ideas. Idea is the new currency, right? Idea is power. So if you're a genius and you recognize that Heerak Christian Kim is genius, which I am, I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of the 21st century, mostly by training, I would say, because I was trained by the greatest minds in the world. I made sure that I was trained by the greatest minds in the world, made an effort to do that. So, yeah, I don't think I was born a genius. I mean, I know people who are born a genius. I'm not one of them. Yeah, I acquired my genius. I'm more, acquisition model, But I am the Leonardo da Vinci of my generation. And not just my generation, 500 years. You're not going to find anybody like me. And so I have these ideas which can revolutionize many different fields, physics, chemistry. So obviously, if you're a genius in chemistry and physics, and you need ideas to trigger a certain research direction, you're going to watch this show. It makes perfect sense to me because you need ideas. And you're not coming up with ideas because you're not the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century I am. You may have some ideas, but you need like a trigger of great ideas, creative ideas that I have as Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. Jared Kushner came independent candidate for U.S. Congress, Region 8 District. That's why people watch this show, for their own personal benefit, not just about surviving COVID. Because people want to be great, and you need ideas to be great. Idea is the new currency. It's like they're getting $1 million for free by watching this show. Because if they don't have one creative idea in 30 years, they're not going to accomplish anything. But if they watch this show and they see like 5, 6 different ideas that are creative, they never thought about, that trigger certain things, they may do great things in their own discipline, like physics, chemistry, infectious diseases, nursing, medicine, physical therapy, linguistics, history, political science, diplomacy. You get my point. Yeah, why do you think people go to Harvard? They don't go to Harvard. Well, some people go for status, but people go to Harvard who are intellectually directed because they want to learn from the greatest minds. I mean, my mind is superior to the majority of the professors at Harvard. I studied at Harvard. So I could say that with confidence, yeah, my professors recognize my brilliance, obviously. Isn't a genius understands genius? Yeah, so why do you think I get invited to all these conferences around the world all the time? Why? What do you think? Because people want my ideas, because they need my ideas. Let's say you've been teaching at Harvard for 30 years. You may not have any ideas anymore. And you're not going to get ideas from inferior students that you're teaching. Some of them may actually give you ideas. So they want somebody like me who they know is creative, who is the Leonardo da Vinci, to come to the conference and have talk with me and hear what I say, or listen to what I say with other people. Because it's a small room, you hear everybody talk. So that you may get a new idea that's gonna get you a new book. You have the potential to write a book in a year, but you need ideas to write a book, in academia. You see what I'm saying? You can't just write a book for the sake of writing a book, especially, books that are geared toward academics. So you need creative ideas. And I'm like the most creative person in Jewish studies. Everybody knows that. Of course you're going to invite me. You know, doesn't matter if you hate me. You're going to invite me because you want ideas, because you're going to get something out of it. You know, the question is, what's in it for me? That's why I get invited to all these conferences. I mean, yes, a lot of people like me. There are people who hate me, who want me to come because they want my ideas. Idea is a currency. They want like $1 million for free. Do you see what I'm saying? That's like the geniuses. You have to be smart enough to understand the currency of ideas. Oil was the currency 50 years ago. Gold was the currency like 100 years ago. The new currency is ideas. Look at all the wealth. That's all because of ideas. You see what I'm saying? Bill Gates knows this. Hey, Bill. You know, it's ideas that makes you filthy wealthy. It's ideas that gives you power. It's ideas that get you the most beautiful women. It's ideas that gives you happiness in life. Without ideas, $1 billion is kind of worthless, you know. And that's why all these billionaires in America treasure me. You know, I'm like national treasure in America because of my ideas. Yeah, that's why you're watching this show too. And liberal media gets it all wrong all the time. CNN, it's a little embarrassing, but you know, I'm glad. Like, you know, I'm sure all the anchors at CNN watch this show every day. They need ideas because they have to stay in the game. Now, how are you going to stay in the game without ideas? Do you see what I'm saying? And you know, you can watch like 10 hours on mediocre people talking, jabbering about something. You're not going to get a single idea. Even if you watch these mediocre people for 5 years, you're going to get zero ideas. You watch my show every day, you're getting new ideas in certain cases. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, you're lucky that I exist in this world and I created this show to help you survive COVID-19. Look at all the things you learned today. Geez, even if you're Jewish, did you know that there was a Jewish temple in Egypt that operated for many, many years, for decades, for centuries? Did you know that? You see what I'm saying? You don't know your own history. That's why you need Heerak Christian Kim, expert in Jewish studies, to teach you about your history. You know, I mean, geez, you should make a little effort to learn your history. Whatever people you are, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you tune in today to watch this show. I'm sure you feel much smarter after watching this show. Don't you feel like your IQ went up a few points? Yeah. So tune in tomorrow, and I'll bring you more facts and important data that you need to survive COVID-19 and to achieve happiness, personal happiness, happiness for your family, happiness for your children. This is an important show. Obviously, you need to be able to live in order to enjoy happiness. So my priority is giving you information that's going to help you survive COVID-19 and live. So don't forget to tune in tomorrow. And yeah, tell all your friends, you know, and everyone you like to watch this show. I mean, I would encourage you to tell your enemies to watch this show too, because, you know, I mean, everybody should survive COVID, right? But yeah, anyway, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So until tomorrow, I will say adieu. Okay, bye.